We're just about to start with the next speaker. This is Sandra from IronSource. And hi, Sandra.
Hi, Igor. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks.
Where are you located?
I am in Tel Aviv.
Wow, that's great. I believe you have some great weather.
I do, and I can see the sea from here. So.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm all surrounded by the walls and green walls actually, so I cannot see anything except like the lights and stuff, but I believe I will see this the sea this summer.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're very excited for your talk, and we are ready to listen about common mistakes game developers make. Over to you right now. Good luck.
Thank you. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Sandra, and I've called this talk 3 common mistakes game developers make. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Sandra. I work at IronSource, and I am VP Strategic Partnerships, which means that my teams are managing existing clients, and most of them obviously game developers. So we see a lot of good stuff that our clients are doing with our products, and we also see some stuff that I think they could do better, and that's what I want to talk about here. First, I want to say a few words about IronSource in case you don't know us. So we are the top growth platform for game developers, meaning that our products are really geared towards games and anything around that, and growing them, obviously. This year, AppsFlyer ranked us to be the top 1 network for casual games, which was exciting, and also the top 3 for all games globally, after Google and Facebook, which was also really, really cool. And we've worked for this for a long time. So that was awesome. I'm showing you as well some of our partners that work with us. So it's a lot of AAA guys and the big names in the industry. So I think that's it about IronSource. The first mistake that I want to talk about is running inefficient cross promotion. Now, obviously, cross promotion, right, is relevant if you have more than 1 game. And before we start, I want to come with a few assumptions around this topic. So the first one, if your game portfolio is homogeneous, your users are potentially interested in playing more than just your 1 game, right? They will probably want to play all of your games like across the board. That's the first one. The second one, if you can keep a valuable user within your own ecosystem, your ROI, return on investment, from this user will grow significantly. And that's because you bought the user once from outside of your own ecosystem. And now, as you move him from game to game inside your ecosystem, obviously your return on investment grows and grows from this user, which is the second assumption. And the third one is that cross promotion actually only works if you can ensure that users that get those impressions are potentially valuable. And what I mean by this is that they will be likely to install your game when you show them your campaign. And that's one of the central things that I'm going to focus on in this section of the talk. If you look at cross promotion more from the monetary side, on the monetization, you have obviously better eCPMs because you're adding a competitive demand into your waterfall, and that overall will grow your ARPDAU and LTV, not just on the game level, but also on the company level. On the user acquisition side, cross promotion brings more installs to your campaigns, and not just that, because the source that you've added is your own supply, and it's probably a game that is similar to the game that you're trying to acquire users for, which means that it's probably going to convert very well. So that's a really important point. And the third one is manage your portfolio's ecosystem, which I kind of touched already. But to be able to move users from 1 game to the other inside your ecosystem, if they are worth it, is definitely something that you should be doing. And here I will pause and I will say that, in my opinion, cross promotion in an environment that is iOS 14. And I'm sure you haven't heard that word even once today. Oh, I'm kidding. You probably hear it every 15 minutes. So iOS 14, in my opinion, will make cross promotion even more strategic. Why? Because you actually have a user that you know because he plays your one game and you know he's valuable to you. And now to be able to move that user from that game to another game with the data that you have about him is just going to be something that you will want to do and you almost have to do. So this is like my, you know, two very humble sense to how cross promotion also plays within this bigger change that we're about to experience in our industry. Cool. Before we go into how to efficiently run cross promotion, I want to go over market solutions that are out there today. And the first one that I want to start with is the native placements, which is right here. Now, native placements, what it is, it's basically somewhere in your game, you have a button that says, see our other games. It's somewhere based on the home screen usually, or, you know, in a very prominent place. It's a very old way of doing cross promotion. The good thing about it, though, is that it gives you full control. And the one caveat for this is that the level of sophistication that I saw among our partners for running this goes from extremely sophisticated, including a full ad stack behind it, to not sophisticated at all. And that's the range that you see. So if you want to invest your resources into building that, go ahead and do it. It's just going to be a lot of resources to invest, but you can have the full control, right? And that's the good part about this. And what's the downsides? So the downsides, the first one is that there is no machine learning. And what I mean here is what I touched already before, the ability to predict an install before showing a campaign, right? Because that is what ad networks do all day long. That's why we have, like, you know, a 20 people data science team who comes up with all those smart algorithms. But that's exactly what is missing in most of the solutions for native placements that I've seen. The second problem is that it's really hard to measure the performance because you don't really, in most cases, you don't really even have attribution. And it's also not running with the other ads that you have already in your game. So if you run rewarded video or interstitial in specific placements, the native placement will be totally detached from that. Which brings me to the second solution that I want to talk about, which I called CPM-based. And what that is essentially if you run any of the big mediations out there, they will all have that solution for you, which basically means that in your waterfall, in that mediation, you can add an instance or a line item that runs as your cross promotion. So the first good thing about this is that it's transparent in your waterfall, which is, I wrote this here as the second point, because you can see where in your waterfall it's placed and you can adjust it. You can change it as you want. And it also utilizes the ad space that you have already. So if you have your video running, you just add your own cross promotion there and then you're good to go. So that's the good stuff. And what's the bad stuff? The bad stuff is, again, that there is no machine learning here. That's why it's called CPM, because CPM meaning it's just optimizing towards an impression, which is like brand demand, right? But it's not like optimizing towards an install. So there is no one that predicts the potential install, and essentially it's wasting impressions, which gets me to the third solution out there. I called it network demand. And now that is basically when you run a campaign with a network, you just don't exclude your own supply on it. So you're running on your own supply with your own demand, which is essentially what cross promotion is, right? And you're doing that through the pipes of the network, which means that the good thing about this is that it actually has machine learning, because there is the data science of the network that is trying to predict if there will be an install. So that's great. But there are two downsides here. And that's, the first one is that you actually pay the network margin. And the margin can be I don't know, as high as 38% or, whatever, 40, maybe it's 5%, but you don't know. That's the point. You have no idea what's the margin. So it can be very expensive. And even if it's not, you don't know that it's not. So that's a problem. And the second problem is that, again, you don't have performance transparency in your waterfall, because you don't see this as a separate instance in your waterfall. You see it as just the network instance that you have there anyway, and that's where your own demand is running together with all the other demand. So this is the market solutions out there. Now, the way that I see it, when you want to run cross promotion, you need to have control, transparency, and machine learning. So first of all, you need full control on both sides. You need to be able to set up the campaigns yourself on the UA side, and you need to be able to set up the waterfall with your cross promotion in it the way that you want it, right? So that's what I mean with control. The second one is that you need to have machine learning, and that's exactly what I've said like now 5 times, that you want to be able to predict if there will be an install. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense for you to show that impression, because if there is no install, you need to show this impression to someone else who will actually pay you for it. Otherwise, you're losing money. And the third one is around data, because I think that when you don't have that full transparency and the data from both sides, you are blind to how efficient it actually is. So that's the 3 things that I think you need to look at when you want to run cross promotion in an efficient way and in a transparent way. I want to finish on a case study that I've added here, which is from Gem City, and they were able to use, they're using the cross promotion tool that we have in our mediation, which works the way that I just told you, and they were able to see installs go up by 2. And the second quote here is something that I want to read to you, because I think it's very much like summarizing everything that I said. So we have complete transparency, so we know we're not cannibalizing our ad revenue. So that's the important thing. And if I had to summarize this section around cross promotion, I would say 2 things. The one is that cross promotion in iOS 14 environment, and anywhere going to less identifiers, because again, like we all know, Google might follow at some point, is going to be more strategic to developers. And the second thing is that you want to be able to have all those things that I've pointed out, which means the control and the smart brain behind it. So that brings me to the second mistake that I see a lot of developers are making, and that's over managing the waterfall. So before we go into the specifics, I want to just remind all of us, like, what is the funnel, right? So we're talking about ARPU optimization, average revenue per user optimization, because that's at the end of the day your goal, right? So you're starting from this point, which is your DAU. Now your DAU comes from the user acquisition that you run, the organic installs that you get, and the quality that your game has, right? So that's what you are giving. Now, you need to make sure that you maximize the impressions from these daily active users as high as you can. And how do you do that? You do that through using the right ad units and comparing them to benchmarks in the industry, and make sure that the implementation is correct. And I'm not going to go into this. We have a lot of content around this here at IronSource, so just visit the website and you'll find like 1 million webinars and articles around this. I want to move on to the second part of this equation, which, now that you have maximized your impressions, you want to make sure that you sell those impressions at the highest price possible. And that's when the waterfall optimization and setup comes into play. So the way that I see it, setting up a waterfall is as simple as 3 steps. And the first of these is bidders, okay? Bidders. And I don't care which mediation you work with. The big ones out there, all of them have bidders in different constellations, and some networks are not here but there, but it doesn't matter. If you have the opportunity to run with bidders, you should, because what it will do is it will give you 2 things. The first one is it will perform better, and the second one is that it will actually save you a lot of work. So those 2 together just you want to run with bidders for those reasons only. And the second part of the step, the steps that I have here, is manual networks. So the manual networks, which you still, again, will have, it doesn't matter which mediation you use, because there still will be some that are not ready yet with bidding or don't want to bid in that specific product that you're using. So for those guys, you want to set up not more than 2 to 3 line items or instances for each of those networks. And you want to do that with a high, medium, and a revenue share eCPM. And in the next slide, I'm showing you a few ranges as well that I think make sense to start from and optimize up from there. Okay, so that's the manual networks. And the last part, and this is where a lot of the developers that I see are kind of overdoing it, is creating only 2 country groups. That's enough. You don't need to put like 15 groups for all of your top countries, and then you need to manage a waterfall forwarded video and one for interstitial. It's just too much for you to really make sure that it runs efficiently. So I recommend you to go with 2 groups. One should be US. You can do that tier 1 as well. You can do US, UK, Canada, Germany, whatever, but it should really be your very, very high performing countries. And even if it's just US, like, that's good enough. And the second group should contain all the other countries. Now let's go to those ranges that I spoke about. So this is again split into 2 different country groups, right? Because you have US and rest of world, and the high range for US somewhere around $15 to $25, and mid range 5 to 14, and then the low range should be a revenue share instance or line item. And what I mean by that is that in the network dashboards, when you set up that instance, just don't give it a target or a flat eCPM. And what happens when you don't do that is that the network then will just optimize according to the revenue share that they have set. And that will ensure that you're picking up the like low level impressions in the waterfall. And it's important because you want to make sure that someone takes them. So this is what you start from. And you can be, as you optimize, you can get to a more sophisticated waterfall, but this is your starting point. And let's talk about optimization for a second, right? Because optimization, in my opinion, needs to be done once a week, maybe even every 2 weeks. I don't think you need to do it more often than that if you have a good setup of the waterfall. And the way to optimize is, first of all, to make decisions, you need to look at a bit more data than just yesterday. You want to look at 7 days, 14 days. And what I'm showing you here in this GIF is that this is IronSource mediation. And what you can do is you can just pick a data range and look at the waterfall. And then you can actually make decisions which network you want to maybe put up, a position, put down a position, change price, whatever. So this is a very convenient way of doing it. Now, what you want to make sure is that all the networks are taking enough impressions. And what do I mean by that? I mean at least 1 to 2K a day. If it's less, maybe you need to consider dropping the price that you're asking from them, or maybe you need to consider dropping them down a little bit more in the waterfall. So that's the 2 options, but I wouldn't keep them in a place of a high position in your waterfall if they don't take enough impressions. And if you want to take this one step further even, which I would recommend you to do, you want to also once a month or something like this, share your waterfall with the networks. And what that will do is it will allow the networks to find their optimal place in the waterfall according to the price levels that you're asking from them. Again, what I'm showing you here is just a very convenient way of doing it. You can just download a CSV and then kind of blur out or delete the names of the networks and then shoot it to your partners. And they will come back with recommendations of how the waterfall should look for them, according to the demand that they are running currently. So that's around waterfall. And I think the 2 main takeaways that I would have here is the first one is bidders, which again saves a lot of time and performs better. And the second one is not to over optimize, like not to do it every day. Just make sure that you have the right setup and run from there. Let's talk about mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is very close to my heart. It's when I see clients separating monetization and marketing and siloing it off from each other. So I want to start this with talking about the growth loop, which I'm sure you saw before, because it's content that we also have a lot when we educate our partners. Because when you look at your business, you want to look at it as a loop, meaning that when you start acquiring new users, and you have organic installs as well, and you run those users and you monetize them the way that you've set it up, ads and in a purchase. And then step number 3 is you want to analyze and optimize that monetization, and you want to try to maximize it. So that could look the following. You can add more placements for rewarded video. You can make rewarded video rewards, the actual amount that you get, more attractive. You can add interstitials. You can add an offer wall. You can segment, right? You can say, hey, interstitial, I will only show to users that are not paying and not engaging with rewarded videos. So they get, after 30 days in my game, they get an interstitial. You can do a lot of things to maximize the LTV here. And once you've done that, you go to step number 4, where you look at the marketing, because now that you are able to make a higher LTV, you can actually pay a higher CPI and on the places where it's worth it for you, and that will maximize your profit. And then basically the whole thing starts all over again. So that's the growth loop, and it very much connects to the example that I want to talk about, because the example that I brought today is using UA insights to boost monetization. This is a client, and it's an ad-based client, okay? What you see on this side is UA channels that they buy from. So you see the orange, which is interstitial, and you see the blue, which is rewarded video. Okay, as you can see, for some reason interstitial is performing much better for them. They are converting much more users through interstitial than through rewarded video. What does that mean? Let's think about it, right? It means that a lot of users that actually start playing their game saw an interstitial somewhere in another game, engaged with it, and installed through that ad unit. So it means that they are familiar with it and they are okay to engage with it. Now, we looked at the monetization side, and that's something that we saw on our side before a QBR that we did with this client. And we saw that on the monetization side, actually, a rewarded video was making much more money than interstitial. And that's what we brought to the user, to the client. And we explained to them that they are probably not aggressive enough on interstitials, because we saw that the channel that they buy from is mostly interstitial. And we also saw that the usage rate for interstitials on this game was much lower than industry benchmarks. And so we told them, hey, let's optimize your interstitials. And once we did that, you can see here what happened. The ARPDAU jumped like a lot, and they were able to then pay higher CPIs and increase their user acquisition scale. And that kind of made them climb up the charts. This is Benny. So this was a very interesting example of seeing how looking at everything together makes just so much sense and allows you to see opportunities that otherwise you might not see. So just summing up this part, I think it's about when you look at your business, you want to really think about what am I doing on UA, and at the same time let the monetization guys know what you're doing, and the other way around, because they influence each other so much. And the more revenue you make from ads, obviously the more they will influence each other. So this is really important to keep in mind in your day-to-day processes and operation. Cool. Let's wrap it up. So the first thing we talked about was cross-promotion. And I think cross-promotion is a great way of keeping valuable users that you know already and that you have data on in your own portfolio. We connected it to iOS 14, and I put here hashtag September is coming, because I think it will get more strategic when we move into that new environment that we will all need to deal with. The second point that I spoke about was set up your waterfall so that it manages itself. And the main thing here again is bidders and making sure that the setup from the start makes sense and kind of maintains itself. And then what you need to do is go in once a week, every 2 weeks, and make sure that it's still running at the best like potential possible. And that's it, you're good to go. It saves so many resources and so much brain power of yourself and your people, that you can then look at more strategic things and really finding opportunities. And the third one is that you need to make sure you always look at user acquisition and ad monetization as one business unit. And it doesn't need to be the same team. It just needs to be so that they really know what the other side is doing. And once you do that, you will also find that you are suddenly able to just grow much more like in a unified way. And it makes a lot of sense. So that's it from me. I'm happy to take any questions. And yeah, Igor, you want to take over?
Thank you very much, Sandra. This was such a great and detailed lecture about monetization. And I believe we will have a very high demand from the audience on downloading this one, because it can really be used as something you can show to your employees and teach them how to work with marketing. So
Great.
you've mentioned you are preparing for September, and that's great that you're implementing the hashtag September is coming, which is awesome, because everybody is so feeling very unconscious right now about September and what's going to happen with the release of iOS 14, right? So we do not have the questions from the audience for this very moment, but I believe if we do have any, we can reach out to you on WN Hub platform. And guys, if you have any questions about monetization and user acquisition, go check out IronSource booth and find their profile on WN Hub and get in touch with them.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and have a nice day.
You too. Have a good one.
Thank you.